All right, let's talk about innate and adaptive immunity. These are your learning objectives. So some characteristics of the immune system. So the primary function of the immune system is to protect the body from harmful invaders. It does this by recognizing self versus non-self. So the self would be like the body's own cells and tissues, whereas non-self would be your foreign substances like bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, and even toxins. So when the immune system detects non-self, it triggers a defense response to eliminate the threat. For immune recognition, so the immune system constantly will monitor the body to determine whether something belongs there. Recognition allows the immune system to ignore normal body cells and attack foreign substances like antigens. The requirements for an effective immune response. So an effective immune response requires cooperation between multiple components, which can include cellular elements like your immune cells. And these are the cells that carry out immune functions like lymphocytes, so your B and T cells, and other immune cells that can detect and destroy pathogens. We also have cell products, which are your immune cells that release substances that help coordinate defense, such as your antibodies, cytokines, and other signaling molecules that can regulate immune activity. Then we also have your non-lymphoid elements. So these include supporting tissues and systems that assist immune responses, such as physical barriers, complement proteins, or other supporting biological structures. For cooperation in the immune system, so the immune system works effectively because of coordinated interaction between components. This cooperation involves detection of non-self substances, communication between immune cells, activation of defensive mechanisms, and elimination of the foreign invader. Immune responses can produce both beneficial and harmful effects. For desirable consequences of the immunity, so these effects help protect the body and maintain health. It can occur with natural resistance, so the body's inborn ability to resist certain infections, and it can present without prior exposure to the pathogen. For recovery, the immune system eliminates pathogens, allowing the body to heal from disease. We can also have acquired resistance to infectious diseases. So this is protection that develops after exposure to a pathogen or vaccination. The immune system remembers the pathogen, providing faster and stronger responses in future infections. For undesirable consequences of immunity, so sometimes the immune responses can actually cause harm to your body, such as allergies. So this is an overreaction of the immune system to harmless substances or allergens, such as pollen, foods, or dust. We can also have transplant rejection. So the immune system recognizes a transplanted organ or tissue as non-self, and it will actually attack it. We can also have autoimmunity. This is where the immune system mistakenly attacks the body's own cells, which can lead to different autoimmune diseases. So there are some major divisions of the immune system, and it's usually commonly divided into two main components as the innate immune system. This is the first line of defense, and it provides immediate protection. Some characteristics of the innate response is it has a rapid response. It is non-specific, so it can target many pathogens in a similar way, and there is no immunological memory, so it does not remember if it's seen that before. Some examples include physical barriers, certain immune cells, and inflammatory responses. And then you have your adaptive immune system. This is actually the second line of defense. It is slower to respond initially, but it is more specific and targeted. Some characteristics of this is it recognizes specific pathogens, it can produce antibodies, and it can develop immunological memory, which can allow for faster responses if you are, exposed in the future. So the innate immune system includes various blood and tissue cell components that actually provide immediate and nonspecific protection against pathogens. We have surface epithelial barriers, and these are the first physical line of defense of the innate immune system. They actually will prevent pathogens from entering the body. And some examples are your skin. We also have mucous membranes, and we also have epithelial linings of the respiratory, digestive, and urogenital tracts. These barriers may also produce protective substances that can inhibit microbial growth. Then we also have tissue sentinel cells. So these tissue sentinel cells are immune cells that are located in tissues that detect invading pathogens early and initiate immune responses. Some major types include macrophages. These actually will engulf and destroy pathogens, which can help activate, and they can also help activate other immune cells. Dendritic cells can capture pathogens and present antigens to adaptive immune cells. These are an important link between innate and adaptive immunity. We also have mast cells. These release chemical mediators such as histamine. They play roles in inflammation and allergic reactions. So leukocytes, or white blood cells in the innate immune system, are important cellular components involved in innate immune responses. Some main hitters you got here is your neutrophils. So the most abundant white blood cell in your body can respond to infection and destroy bacteria and fungi. You have your eosinophils. So these are important in defense against parasites, and these are also involved in allergic reactions. We also have basophils, which release inflammatory chemicals such as histamine, and it participates in allergic and inflammatory responses. Then we have your monocytes. These circulate in the blood, and they differentiate into macrophages when they enter into tissues. Macrophages, as mentioned earlier, are derived from monocytes, and they can engulf pathogens and remove cellular debris. Natural killer, or NK cells, destroy virus-infected cells and tumor cells. And then you have your innate lymphoid cells, and these produce signaling molecules that can help regulate immune responses. Lymphocytes are the main mediators of the adaptive immune system. They are responsible for specific immune responses against pathogens. The main types of lymphocytes are your B and T lymphocytes. So your B lymphocytes, or your B cells, produce antibodies that target specific pathogens. Your T lymphocytes, or your T cells, help regulate immune responses and destroy infected cells. Some features of lymphocytes: so they can recognize specific antigens, they can provide targeted immune responses, and they can develop immunological memory for faster responses during future infections. Certain immune cells can reside in tissues and act as sentinels, meaning they monitor tissues for the presence of microbes and help start immune responses. Some of these tissue cells, sentinel cells, are your dendritic cells. These detect microbes and present antigens to the lymphocytes. They play a major role in activating the adaptive immune system. For macrophages, these engulf and destroy microbes through phagocytosis, and they release signals that can actually activate other immune cells. Then you have your mast cells, and these release chemical mediators like histamine, and they're involved in inflammation and allergic reactions. So picture just kind of showing you the different cells of the immune system. So during mammalian immunologic development, lymphocytes originate from the progenitor or stem cells. In the early embryo, these precursor cells can arise from the yolk sac and embryonic liver. These early sites are responsible for producing the initial immune cell precursors. So for the bone marrow, the role is during fetal development and throughout life, the bone marrow becomes the main source of progenitor cells. The bone marrow produces hematopoietic stem cells. These cells will then be differentiated into lymphoid progenitor cells, or can be differentiated into those. These progenitor cells can develop into lymphoblasts, which are immature lymphocytes. So after formation in the bone marrow, lymphoid precursor cells continue to develop and multiply. This development occurs as the cells migrate to lymphoid tissues. So our two main categories of lymphoid tissues are your primary and secondary lymphoid tissues. Your primary lymphoid tissues are sites where lymphocytes develop and mature. For secondary lymphoid tissues, this is sites where lymphocytes encounter antigens and initiate the immune responses. The mature lymphocytes differentiate into two main types. So like we mentioned before, we have your T cells and your B cells. These two types have distinct roles in the adaptive immunity. Your T cells, they arise in the thymus from precursors originating in the fetal liver or bone marrow. So for development, so during embryonic development, progenitor cells seed the thymus where they mature into functional T cells. For the function, T cells are primarily responsible for cell-mediated immunity, recognizing and destroying infected or abnormal cells, and helping activate other immune cells. B cells, these are going to mature most likely in the bone marrow. For primary function, they produce antibodies, so your humoral immunity, and they form memory B cells for faster response during future infections. Then we have your NK, or your natural killer lymphocytes. These are unique lymphocytes that function at the interface of innate and adaptive immunity. Their roles, they play a defense against infectious diseases, especially viral infections. They also play a role in tumor surveillance, so they can detect and kill abnormal cells. NK cells do not require prior antigen exposure to act, which makes them part of the innate immunity, but they also influence adaptive responses. Then you have your innate lymphoid cells. These were recently discovered lymphocytes that bridge innate and adaptive immunity. Their function is to produce signaling molecules, or cytokines, help coordinate immune responses, and respond rapidly to tissue infections and damage. For plasma cells, this is the end stage of the B cell differentiation. So the formation, it starts with B lymphocytes activate, and then they differentiate into large antibody-producing plasma cells. Their function is to secrete large amounts of antibodies and provide humoral immunity against specific pathogens. All right, now we have our primary and secondary lymphoid organs. So primary or central lymphoid organs are sites where lymphocytes are generated and mature. In mammals, these include bone marrow or the thymus. So for bone marrow, the source of progenitor stem cells that give rise to all blood and immune cells. It supports differentiation of mature lymphocytes, including B and T lymphocytes. It's likely derived from a common lymphoid progenitor cell. For the thymus, it's specialized for T lymphocyte development. So T cell precursors from the bone marrow migrate to the thymus to undergo maturation and selection. That makes it kind of easy to remember because you have T for thymus and B for bone marrow. So we have the role of the bone marrow in GALT and B cell differentiation. So bone marrow and gut-associated lymphoid tissue, or GALT, may support the differentiation of progenitor cells into B lymphocytes. These tissues provide the microenvironment necessary for B cell maturation and activation. Secondary lymphoid tissues, or secondary lymphoid organs, are sites where mature lymphocytes encounter antigens, become activated, and mount the immune response. Some major secondary lymphoid tissues include your lymph nodes, which filter lymph and trap pathogens, your spleen, which filters blood and removes pathogens and damaged cells, and your gut-associated lymphoid tissue, or your GALT, which is the immune surveillance in the gastrointestinal tract. You have your thoracic duct as well, which is a major lymphatic vessel that transports lymphocytes throughout the body. You have your bronchus-associated lymphoid tissue, or your BALT, which monitors the respiratory tract. And then you have your skin-associated lymphoid tissue, or SALT, which provides immune protection in the skin. And last but not least, we have the blood, which circulates lymphocytes and other immune cells throughout your whole body. So the innate immune system, as mentioned before, provides immediate nonspecific defense against pathogens. The main cellular components include your dendritic cells, They detect pathogens and activate adaptive immunity. Monocytes and macrophages can engulf pathogens and remove debris. And then you have your granulocytic cells, such as neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils, which mediate inflammation and pathogen destruction. Natural killer, or NK lymphocytes, attack infected or tumor cells without prior antigen exposure. And then you have your innate lymphoid cells, which produce your cytokines and help regular immune responses. For the adaptive immune system, you have organized basically around your T and B lymphocytes. As mentioned before, these functions for your T cells is to mediate cellular immunity and regulate immune responses, where your B cells will produce antibodies for humoral immunity. The activation, so the adaptive immune system becomes essential if innate immunity is overwhelmed, providing specific and long-lasting protection. Just a picture showing you the divisions of the immune system. All right, so the first line of defense for your body, we have physical barriers. So unbroken skin will provide a tough protective layer that prevents pathogen entry. You have mucosal membranes that line the respiratory, digestive, and urogenital tracts. These act as a first line of defense against invading microbes. The mechanical actions, so actions such as coughing, sneezing, swallowing, or flushing by urine can help wash away potential pathogens. Then we have chemical barriers, so tears and saliva actually contain antimicrobial substances, including enzymes and chemicals that can destroy or inhibit microbial growth. These secretions complement physical barriers to reduce the chance of infection. Then we have microbiota. So the immune system is tightly regulated to ensure effective defense while preventing overreaction or damage to the body. Regulation occurs at both local or tissue and systemic levels and affect innate and adaptive immunity. So functions of immune regulation, so the development and differentiation. So regulates the development and differentiation of local immune components within the tissues and systemic immune components, so throughout the whole body. It also coordinates non-immune cells that support immunity. So regulation of innate immune functions maintains innate immune homeostasis to prevent unnecessary inflammation. It can also ensure that tissues or tissue resident cells and circulating innate cells respond appropriately to the pathogens. So regulation of adaptive immune functions in the intestines controls the T and B lymphocyte activity in the gut. It's important for tolerance to food antigens in gut microbiota while still responding to harmful microbes. So regulation of systemic immune functions coordinates innate and adaptive immune responses across the body and maintains immune balance to prevent autoimmune reactions and chronic inflammation. Second line of defense is we have our natural immunity, which refers to the body's innate or inborn resistance to infection. It is present from birth and does not require prior exposure to pathogens. So characteristics, it's nonspecific, like mentioned. It provides a general defense against a wide range of pathogens. It does have an immediate response, so it acts rapidly upon encountering any foreign microbes. And it's the first line of defense, which includes your physical barriers, chemical barriers, and innate immune cells. All right, then we have our third line of defense. So we have acquired immunity or adaptive immunity, is the same thing, is the body-specific defense mechanism that develops after exposure to a pathogen or antigen. It provides targeted protection and long-lasting immunity. So some features, we have specificity, where the immune responses are directed against specific antigens, which can help ensure that the correct immune cells and antibodies target the invading pathogen. We also have a memory that is associated with this. So once it's been exposed to a pathogen, the immune system will remember it. Secondary exposure will actually trigger a faster and stronger response, providing long-term protection, if you're exposed again. So just some comparison notes here. We have the innate immune system is an ancient form of host defense that evolved before the adaptive immune system. It provides a rapid first-line protection against infections. Some characteristics, it has limited recognition, so it may not detect every possible antigen. And we're going to focus on groups of pathogens. So targets pathogen-associated molecular patterns, or PAMPs, which are common molecular features shared by classes of microorganisms. We have pattern recognition receptors, or PRRs. So these are receptors on innate immune cells that can detect those PAMPs. So the innate immune system cannot recognize every individual antigen. Instead, it focuses on broad groups of microorganisms with common features called pathogen-associated molecular patterns, or PAMPs. The pattern recognition receptors, or the PRRs, are specialized receptors on innate immune cells that can detect those PAMPs. Its function is to trigger innate immune responses, including inflammation, phagocytosis, and activation of adaptive immunity. So an example real quick would be like your toll-like receptors. It can detect bacterial, viral, and fungal components. So secreted PRRs are molecules that circulate in the blood and lymph. They bind to pathogen-associated molecular patterns, or those PAMPs, on surface of many pathogens. Its function is binding of secreted PRRs to PAMPs trigger that complement cascade. The complement cascade outcomes, so we have opsonization. So those pathogens are marked for easier recognition by phagocytes. And then we have enhanced phagocytosis. So pathogens are rapidly engulfed and destroyed by immune cells. For phagocytosis receptors, so these are cell surface receptors on phagocytic cells that bind pathogens. Its function is to initiate signals inside the cell, trigger the release of effector molecules such as cytokines to coordinate the immune responses. The macrophages will possess cell surface receptors that actually recognize the PAMPs, and this allows them to detect, engulf, and destroy pathogens efficiently. Your toll-like receptors, so they have a transmembrane receptors that recognize specific types of PAMPs. These are found on macrophages, dendritic cells, and epithelial cells. Their function is to detect pathogens and activate innate immune signaling pathways, which can include cytokine production and phagocytosis.